Matt Hancock, eh? What to even say? I know what some of you are thinking. Oh, just another video going on about how embarrassing Matt Hancock is to every living creature on the face of the earth and generally ridiculing him. Yes, partly, that is this video. But also, I obviously want to make wider points about the political elite in this country, which I think Matt Hancock in so many ways epitomises everything that's wrong with them. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, let's just roll a clip from this extraordinary farce, which is entirely created by Matt Hancock, on the Newsagents podcast, if you haven't already had the interesting experience of having to watch this.
But what has happened to you over the past 2 years?
Yeah.
You know, in office, then you're forced to resign over in relationship
Falling in love with somebody, yeah.
Falling in love. Well,
Falling in love and breaking your own rules.
You know,
Lewis,
you're the one
actually,
who-
just stop.
You're the
Lewis,
one who
stop.
mentioned-
Lewis, stop. I'm a human being, right?
Yeah. And you're,
Okay,
and you're a
no.
Secretary of State.
Don't interrupt me now, because I'm going to say something that I'd like you to listen to. I'm a human being. John's question is leading up to essentially how do you cope with this amount of stuff as a human being? And part of the answer is that, of course, politicians, have to take the rough with the smooth. And I have learned a huge amount about resilience. But I also now am just not interested in having people just go over old coals again and again and again. It's not fair and it's not right, because we are human too.
Of course,
and I have put myself through the most extraordinary amount of scrutiny over everything that happened, and the inquiry will rightly do that again in a proper format for learning the lessons for the country, and I'm enthusiastic about playing my part in that. But I'm also now perfectly willing and totally within my rights to say,
But you chose to be in public life. You chose to be the Secretary of State. You could have walked away at any time. So
Absolutely.
it is perfectly legitimate for people and journalists to continue to ask you questions about your record in that time. You were, by your own admission, it was an enormous event of global
that's right.
import.
And what
people
I'm
have the
saying
right
is,
to ask you.
absolutely, and I have
You
answered.
talk about resilience, but it doesn't sound very resilient when you're
No,
answering in
because
that way.
actually, I'm now leaving Parliament, right? I care about the future of the country and about the future of the Conservative Party, so I want to talk about these things. But I'm also a human being, right?
Of course.
And one of
We're
the
all human
reasons, so I'm absolutely up for scrutiny on the substance, but I'm also, I think it's also reasonable to say enough is enough.
First off, kudos to Lewis Goodall there, who's always been an excellent journalist, willing to actually challenge and scrutinise our politicians. I think one of the reasons he couldn't stay at the BBC, which just sums up, I think, the state of the BBC at the moment. But that from Matt Hancock is, it's pathetic. It's completely pathetic. It is a phenomenon of what I would describe as cry bullying by the powerful in this country. Of course, Matt Hancock doesn't want to talk about all the things that he's done, which are terrible, as he seeks to be turned into some weird reality TV star. And he obviously wants to be loved and admired. Don't be a politician who does terrible things, which you obviously want erased from history. Obviously. Why would anyone who is responsible for doing terrible things in their practical implication, of course they don't want to talk about them. Of course he wants to talk about what a nice guy he thinks he is. Now, we've seen over the last few years an attempt by the powerful to portray scrutinising them, the powerful, as somehow being hounded or bullied. As they themselves spend, if you look at our government and our media, huge amounts of time hounding and bullying people who don't actually have a voice. I'm talking about refugees, I'm talking about migrants, I'm talking about trans people at the moment. There's a whole list of targets this lot are willing to go through. Now, here are the facts. Around 200,000 of our fellow citizens died during the pandemic. That is 10 times more than what the chief scientific officer said at the beginning would be a good result, even though, of course, he said that would be bad enough on its own terms. To put that in perspective, that's over 5 times more than the Luftwaffe managed in the Blitz. We always were going to suffer deaths, obviously. It was always going to be a terrible crisis, obviously. But we didn't need to lose so many people in this catastrophe, which we suffered, the greatest catastrophe since the war, with all the terrible other consequences that we suffered during lockdown. Now, there were repeated disastrous failures by this government, which made the crisis worse, and this government included the Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, peddling the government peddled the idea of herd immunity, left the NHS exposed to a terrible crisis by not funding it properly. And on that, Matt Hancock himself clearly voted time and time again not to give the NHS the resources that it needed. In the Cameron era, it went through the longest squeeze in its funding as a proportion of the economy since it was founded. Jeremy Hunt, who was his predecessor to Matt Hancock as Health Secretary, himself admitted that understaffing, for example, had left this country exposed to the pandemic. So that's another point. Not locking down quickly enough, then relaxing too quickly, and we end up with the worst of all worlds then, because obviously we had to lock down, we were going to lock down, but if you let the virus run on the rampage, then you end up having to lock down longer. And lockdowns were terrible, obviously. They were an evil. It's just we were up against a greater evil. Messing up with PPE, not having PPE stocks, even when the pandemic was clearly underway in China. Then having a massive scandal over PPE contracts, which I'll come on to. Care homes, where vulnerable patients were discharged from hospitals, sent into care homes, where they seeded the care home sector, killing a massive number of care home residents. 1 in 14 care home residents dying of COVID in the first 3 months of the pandemic. Again, terrible consequences of what the government did. I mean, the terrible communications. I mean, we were led by a Prime Minister who was boasting about shaking hands with COVID patients in a hospital and then ended up in intensive care, which, frankly, it ended up being one of the most important pieces of communication the government did inadvertently, because it sort of underlined what happens for those who ended up or could end up getting COVID, the terrible consequences. Now, and then obviously this government was full of people who communicated laws, told us to follow the rules over and over again, ensured that often across the country people had huge fines, who were arrested and charged, including homeless people, children fined, that kind of thing. But they kept breaking the rules, including Matt Hancock. This guy, the literal health secretary, who has a prime responsibility in communicating the rules, broke his own rules by having it off with somebody in his office. Just ridiculous. Then he abdicated his responsibilities as an MP, a constituency MP, by trying to whitewash his reputation and making a load of cash by going on, I'm a celebrity. And then he has the audacity to try and shut down any scrutiny, claiming, it's so unfair, it's so unfair. Honestly, I think the powerful do think they're victims in this country. It's a phenomenon of the sole winner. We keep seeing this as well. Brexiteers and Donald Trump supporters, they act as though they've lost even when they've won. I mean, Trump did end up losing, to be fair, and didn't win the popular vote. But you know what I mean? When he became president, it was like he wasn't. He was besieged and all the rest of it. Now, let's just look at another Matt Hancock. This clip, I promise you, is much shorter.
Right? Because I'm a normal person. Now, I'm not a Conservative MP. Right? And it's just be normal, like the people who we represent. That's what we need to do. That's a really good starting point.
What is this guy going on about? Anyone who has to say that they're normal is not really passing the normal smell test to me. Protesting a little bit too much. It's somewhere in the no man's land, that, isn't it, between David Brent and Alan Partridge. But without the charm of either. Now, also, say he's not a Tory MP. Yeah, you are, mate. I mean, I know you've got designs of being a reality TV star, and I know you've had the whip withdrawn, but you are a member of the Conservative Party and you are an MP, so let's not piss about with semantics here. Now, on COVID, we already know, because of the fantastic work of the Just Law Project, do follow them, that he acted unlawfully by failing to publish COVID contracts. What we also know this week about newly released WhatsApp messages and emails between Tory donors and Matt Hancock is that two Mahusive donors for the Tories had direct access to the guy as health secretary and used their privileged position to push companies offering COVID-related services. Now, in fairness, both say, well, we didn't make any profits from the contacts. We were driven by wanting to help the country out in a time of crisis. Hancock says the messages were passed on in an appropriate way. But they give an insight, or, kind of big question marks, over how the well-connected wielded their influence during the pandemic. We already know the government ran this so-called VIP lane, which is why they were found to have acted unlawfully. Now, these are all things he needs to be challenged on and scrutinised on, because he's a politician, not a reality TV star, despite his attempts to reinvent. And he must be always challenged about this, because unfortunately, those tens of thousands of people, over 200,000 people, but how many tens of thousands could have been saved if things had been done differently? They're never going to be brought back. They're dead. That's it. Including two of my relatives. But we have to hold the powerful always to account. We can't let them slime out of accountability, which is what they try and do time and time again. We saw it with Boris Johnson with his bluster, and we can see it with the likes of Matt Hancock. Don't let them get away with it. Always challenge, always scrutinise the powerful, and don't let them try and pretend that they are victims who are being hounded just because people want the truth. Please like, subscribe, do support us on patreon.com/MJZ4. And also listen on the podcast. I'll see you in a bit.